join us. Okay, we got that nice little message. Today we are bringing you Build a Smart Online Marketing Strategy with Melissa Forziat. We love this format because it gives you all an opportunity to talk and learn together, ask questions along the way, and work through whatever challenges and successes you and your small businesses may be having. It is an interactive hour. We want it to be, so you're encouraged to ask questions. Again, please keep yourself on mute until you have a question. You can raise your hand or post that in the chat. I want to introduce Melissa to you. She is a Southern California-based marketer, speaker, consultant, and author. She teaches small businesses how to market on a budget and helps them execute their marketing strategies, in addition to working with business organizations to train their trainers. She offers keynotes, presentations, workshops, and webinars, and her national and international speaking schedule has taken her as far as New Zealand. To date, she's delivered over 120 workshops and webinars, which has probably gone up now, Melissa, because I know you've been doing a lot of it, to thousands of attendees. Before starting Melissa Forziat Events and Marketing, her career involved roles with the Olympic Winter Games, Rugby World Cup, and U.S. Olympic Committee. Okay, Melissa, I'm going to turn this over to you. If you've got, again, I'll repeat, if you've got questions or there's anything that you want to ask, please put that in the chat or raise your hand. And again, if you've just joined us, if you could maybe tell us where you're joining us from, the city, and then also the name of your business or the industry that you're in, that would be great. So I'm going to go on mute and turn off my camera, but I'm here if anybody needs me.
Thank you so much for that, Lindsay. And, a huge thank you to Lindsay and Julie and Mary Beth and everybody over at the University of Arkansas ASB TDC. You may have noticed this if you've looked at the calendar online, but this is one of quite a few presentations that we've had lined up for this year and next year. So at the end of this presentation, I'll tell you about a couple of the ones that are coming up in the future, but I'm very excited that we've got all of you on today to do a deeper dive in online marketing strategy in general. I really prefer to talk about all these different elements when talking about online, not just focusing on one area, because to me, online marketing is really about how everything works in tandem. So for those of you who haven't heard me talk before or who aren't familiar with me yet, let me give you a little bit more background on my bio to add to what Lindsay was saying. I started out in my career doing major international sport events, which means I worked Olympic Winter Games, I worked Rugby World Cup, I worked with the U.S. Olympic Committee. These are some of the biggest brands in the world, some of the biggest events in the world. And in the process of working for events and projects that had a scope of that size, I learned a lot about how they do what they do, how they market, and how they build a message over time. They have a variety of different target markets they're trying to reach. They often have, a decade or more to build a message before they make significant calls to action and really need to hit their deadlines and their numbers. And so because of that, they spend a lot of time sort of building relationships, driving traffic around both online and offline. And in the online space, they're really good at sort of staying connected with people in all the different forms that they can do that. So when I started my own business almost 9 years ago now, I have a micro business. I'm sure many of you have micro businesses as well. And I certainly don't have the budget of an Olympic Games. I imagine you don't either. We probably don't have the same human resources. We probably don't have the same time to give to the project as a whole that, a whole team of people would be able to give to just marketing. And yet we still have to be effective in building our message. So for me, being effective and being efficient are the names of the game. And when I look at online marketing, I'm really thinking about how can I get the most out of everything that I do. And so that's how I'll be talking about this with you today. We're really going to focus on organic marketing as efficiently as possible to make sure you're setting yourself up as well as you can for long-term success in your business. So hopefully all of that sounds good to you. Now, having said that, a few quick housekeeping items before we jump in. I do encourage you, like any presentation that I give, I'm going to give a lot of material here, and you're probably going to get more out of it if you're able to focus in. So if there's any distractions that are happening right now on your end that you're able to minimize, this is a great time to do it. That could be silencing your phone, that could be shutting off a messaging device, anything that's happening in the background that's taking your attention away that you can shut off. Take a moment now to shut it off so that when you're listening to this material, you can really think about it in the context of your specific business. There will be quite a lot of slides in this presentation as well. Some of them are even intended to be packaged up as one-pagers or a little packet of information for you to take away and have as a resource. So, basically all of this information, all this whole slide deck, I've got a link to this, and I'm going to make sure that I give this to the ASVTDC team to be able to send that out to all of you afterwards, because like I said, some of these are really good resources for you that you'll want to have later. And in terms of questions, if any of you have been on my other sessions, the questions for this one will work a little bit differently. Normally I take questions at the end. And for this one, you're going to see in a moment when I lay out how we'll approach this topic, there are going to be a couple of natural breaks in the middle where we can also take questions. And I want to make sure that we've taken questions at any of those moments before we move on. So stay tuned in just a minute for me to show you really the layout of how we're talking about it today. And I'll let you know when those questions sections will be. For me, it's easier to monitor questions or comments in the chat. So, hello to everybody who's been commenting in the chat so far. Thanks for telling us where you're based. Love to know more about your businesses there. Feel free to chat and share that information with everybody, or at least with us. So like I said, chat is preferred, but if you do want to raise your hand and have us call on you to speak aloud, I'm sure we can make that work as well. So having said all of that, here's how we'll approach it today. I told you I was going to give you some information about this, and I'll also let you know in this context where the breaks will be for questions. So first, we'll set up with some core strategy. What are you trying to do in online marketing? What are we trying to achieve here? Then we're going to start getting tactical. There are 5 different areas that we're going to look at. So we're going to start by looking at websites and blogs, and then we're going to take a break for questions after that, because those sections to me have sort of a natural pause that can happen after. Then we'll talk about social media, and we'll take a break again after that for questions. And then we'll do those last 2 sections of newsletters and lead magnets and take any final questions at the very end. So hopefully that gives you a sense of what's coming up here, the rhythm of how we'll be approaching this, and the sections that in my mind kind of group together as well. Okay, so as we start to think about jumping in here, I want to be very transparent with you about why I host a presentation like this. I think about my biggest mistake when I think about online marketing, and here, obviously I'm going back to my Olympic days. This is me on the floor being run over by a fake bobsleigh in the middle of an Olympic store. But I felt this was representative of me in online marketing in the early days. I remember when I started my business way back when, I was really trying to build a significant Facebook following, and I was very assertive about building relationships there, and I built a nice size following, but I didn't have anything for people to sign up for. I had no way for those people to get onto my list. And so, a lot of those people who landed on my Facebook page, eventually they got off of Facebook, and I was never able to reach them again. So, it could have been a different story. It could have been that I had a consistent way of communicating with them all the time, whether or not they were on Facebook anymore. But I hadn't set that up yet in my business. Had I done things in a slightly different order, had I had a way to capture their email addresses, perhaps, I'd probably have a slightly bigger list today than what I do. And that was a frustration for me, because I had put so much time, so much effort into it. So I often find that a successful online marketing strategy is about having the right components in the right order, so that when you're doing all that work, you're not wasting a lot of that effort. You're really maximizing as much of it as you can. So that's why we have this conversation today. That's why we're talking about those 5 different areas of online marketing that we'll be covering today, because I'd really like you to come in with a more complete understanding of what a smart online marketing strategy includes, what it looks like, and what role everything plays in that process. So you can make decisions about, is there anything that you need to build right now? Is there anything else that you need to be doing to get the most from the work you're already doing? So hopefully we can avoid you making the same mistake that I did somewhere along the way. So here's how we'll talk about this. Are you in the right place right now? What are we talking about today? Well, first, we're going to talk about building an online presence that has staying power. I'm not a believer that everybody's going to be viral overnight. I've not been viral overnight, that is for sure. Overnight success online in a time when it's so saturated to be there is a unrealistic expectation to come in with. But if we all plan for long-term success, if we plan for really setting up the pieces that are going to allow us to thrive over time and build relationships over time, we're probably going to be more successful and more satisfied with the marketing that we're doing overall. So that's what we'll be talking about today, that sort of long-term building. Now, we're also going to talk about learning how to build community online. How do you build relationships? How do you meet people and stay connected with them and get conversation going? And it's not just about spraying information out there and kind of walking away from it. It's really about how can you use it as a way to find the people who should be part of your community and bring them into the fold in a deeper way. We're also going to be talking about building an organic plan that will be viable with a low budget. Look, every time I talk, I'm going to be talking about marketing on a budget in some way, shape, or form. And that is what we will be doing today. And this is, I think, really important because with online marketing, there can be a lot of pressure and a lot of avenues to advertise. So we're going to focus on the more organic side of it all today. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a moment here, because what we're not talking about today, I really want to emphasize this. If you were here to learn about these things, you're probably not going to get the information you were looking for in this session. We are not talking about paid advertising. We're not talking about lookalike audiences, boosting SEO or SEM services, with a couple of quick exceptions on that one. But we're not talking about pixels or retargeting or geo-targeting or pay-per-click or ad budgets. All of those things are great things to talk about. They're all very nuanced, very detailed, a lot of high-level information that somebody could share about those things. But there's a reason we're not addressing those today in the context of an overall smart online marketing strategy. Those tools, those advertising tools, to me, they can expedite the reach of an already good online marketing plan, but they are not a replacement for a smart online marketing plan. They are, I would say, an enhancement to it, but they are not a replacement for it. If you don't have a good marketing plan in place, but you do a lot of advertising, you're going to end up wasting a lot more of that money that you spend than you probably wish you would have upfront. So there's a visual I would like you to have as you think about this idea. And the visual is like, imagine you're really thirsty. You want to drink some water. Would you pour that water into a glass or into a sieve to drink out of? So you've got this sieve, you've got it under the faucet, you're pouring the water into the sieve, and the water keeps spilling out the sides because there's a bunch of holes in this vessel you're trying to capture the water in. You keep pouring the water in, it keeps coming out. You're having a hard time getting it to collect, and it's going to be hard to drink and satisfy your thirst, right? But if you pour that water into a glass or into a cup, there are no holes in it. You pour the water in, the water fills up in the glass, you drink out of it, you feel good about life, right? So to me, this visual applies to your marketing plan too. If your marketing plan has holes in it, and then you spend a ton of time or a ton of money advertising to bring new leads into it, they're going to be spilling out the sides because there's a lot of places in your plan where they can escape, where we're dropping them, where we're ignoring them, where we're stopping our communication with them, whether we knew it or not. We just don't have a system or a plan for keeping them in the fold. So they're spilling out the sides like they would in a sieve, and you're not able to really build a relationship with those people until they're ready to buy something from you. Whereas you pour those leads into a glass, you have a solid marketing plan with fewer ways for them to escape or be ignored. And you're more likely to be able to keep those people in your sales pipeline longer so that you can generate revenue, generate a referral, or whatever you're going to generate with that person. So hopefully that visual gives you an idea here. We're focusing in on the building of the core solid marketing plan first. And then if you want to spend more money or more time bringing a lot of leads in, it'll be much more effective at that point. So if all of that sounds good to you, hopefully you're all in the right place. Let's go ahead and talk about how to build a smart online marketing strategy. Okay, first things first, I promised we talk about core strategy. So let's jump in on this one. Like I said, and I want to reiterate this, online marketing is a long-term strategy. If you're looking for me to tell you how to make it happen overnight, I wasn't able to do that. So I won't be able to give you tips like that, but I can really help you set up a good framework for keeping the leads with you and building those relationships so that you keep them with you long enough that they become customers. So we're really aiming for this long-term strategy setup here. And for that purpose, we have 5 tools in the tool belt that we'll talk about today. There may be more to talk about, but to me, these 5 represent a sort of a closed system unto themselves. So we'll talk about your website, we'll talk about blogs, we'll talk about social media, we'll talk about newsletters, and we'll talk about lead magnets. And I'm going to throw out a question to you here because I believe that one of these 5 things is not mandatory. So which of these things do you think isn't mandatory? Feel free to go into the chat and write your answer there, looking at these 5 answers. So website, blog, social media, newsletters, and lead magnets. So if I said that one of these things isn't mandatory in an online marketing plan, which one do you think it is? So far, I've got 4 blogs. I've got one person who said social media. We got blog, got newsletter. Thanks for getting these answers in. I'm definitely getting some good quick reactions here. Awesome. I love it. I'm just hanging on a moment in case anybody else wants to jump in. I've got another blog. Let's see, another blog. So many people said blog that I haven't even counted it up yet, but that's for sure the trend based on what I've just said. Lead magnet, we've got one for lead magnet. Thanks everybody for jumping in with these. Yeah, awesome. Okay, so I would say based on what I just read off, I think we're looking at blog being the far and away answer to that question. I'm not going to answer your question just yet. I'm not going to reveal which one I believe is unnecessary or not mandatory just yet. But when we get there, I'll let you know what it is. And on the way there, I'm going to try to convince you on the other ones, just in case. So having said that, let's talk about why we have these different tools. To me, every single one of those tools has a specific function in the overall strategy. Most of this presentation is going to be about sharing what that function is and elaborating on that so you understand the role of it. But there is an overall strategy that we're trying to achieve too. So before we get into those specific purposes, I want to make sure we're all working with the same ideas of what we're trying to accomplish with online marketing in general. So your online marketing strategy can have 5 overall objectives. And this is about really picking what you're trying to do on any given place where you're marketing. So one objective that we could be trying to achieve is building the brand, getting that brand awareness, getting really the brand values out there. This is an advantage that we have with online marketing that perhaps we didn't have some years ago before online marketing. If you think about way back when, decades ago, if you wanted to have a third party or if you wanted to get a feature out about your business, we were usually looking at third parties who were doing earned media like newspapers or magazines or TV or radio. If you could get a feature or an interview in something like that, it was a great opportunity for your business. It was the kind of thing that really could make a business, to be able to have a platform like that where all those eyes were already going to be, and then get your business featured there. Those opportunities were few and far between. There weren't a lot of those spots to go around, but if you got one of those spots for your business, everybody was looking at those sources, so you'd get a huge uptick in business or reach or visitors or whatever it was you were looking for. So we've flipped this model now because we have the ability to control the narrative. We have the ability to say what we want to say about our business. We have the channels and the tools to be able to put our message out there, even for free. So without advertising, we have the way, the means of being able to get our own story out there without somebody else editing it, without somebody else putting their spin on it. We control that narrative. We have, free reign over whatever tool we're using when it comes to online marketing usually. But because of that, those platforms, pretty much all of them, are very saturated. There are a lot of other people there trying to do the same thing. So there's a lot of competition for your audience, and you have to break through it somehow, which is, again, really flipping the model of what we used to have. But I will say that the advantage still stands. If you have the ability to get somebody to any of these online marketing tools, any of your pages or profiles or accounts or whatever it is you've created, can you keep them there long enough to feel like they've really gotten to know who you are and who your business is based on what you chose to say about your brand and how you chose to say it? So one of the jobs that we ultimately try to do is make sure that once somebody gets to us, they get the information they need to really understand what our business is and what our products and services are, for that matter. So that's the first objective. Now, the second objective would be building reputation. Now, this is actually pretty important because as I've gotten further into my business, something that I've looked into more for myself is marketing and sales psychology. And one of the things that you realize in that process is that there are several different personality types in the buying process. And everybody has, at least one of those types. Definitely one of them is more dominant. And yet all of them, no matter what they're looking for from the seller to get the information they need, pretty much all of them need some kind of validation along the way. Everybody's kind of validation they need is a little different, but they need validation nonetheless before they make a purchasing decision. So as sellers, as marketers, we have to make sure that we're actually saying what makes our business, what makes our brand worth a look. What gives us the expertise, showing people that there's good quality of our products and services. Whatever you can do to really establish reputation for your business is going to help your buyers make their decision down the road. And I know this can be tricky for people. I know that for some small business owners, for many small business owners, there's a concern about coming off as not being humble. I've had people ask me that question so many times. I want to sell, but I want to be humble. You can do all of those things. You can talk about you can talk in a humble way about the strength of your business, but it's still important to get that message out because people are looking for validation in their purchase decisions. So this is something to think about. And the great news with online marketing is that because you're controlling your content, because you're controlling your narrative, you get to decide how you include information like this that could potentially back up somebody else's decision to buy from you. Now, a third objective is creating community. I believe that creating community does say a little something about reputation as well. If you have two restaurants that you're deciding between where you want to eat, one has a line out the door and one has nobody in it, which one has the better food? Well, you're probably going to think the one with more people at it has the better food. But we don't really know that. We don't know anything about the quality of the food really by looking at the number of people there. And yet psychologically, seeing a lot of people clamoring around one business makes us think that they're a popular business for some reason, and maybe it's because of the quality of their product. So, creating community is something that can create a perception about reputation and influence objective number 2, but it's also its own thing. With online marketing, we can be proactive as marketers, and we can go out and look for new people to add to our community and start engaging with them and communicating with them to bring them into the fold. So you really do get to find new people somewhat easily and try to get them to become a part of your community. This can be a strategic goal that you have. Now, a fourth goal that you may have is generating leads. I believe this is a byproduct of doing the first 3 goals and then creating an avenue for those people to get into a one-to-one conversation with you. So if you've built your brand, your reputation, and your community, and then you gave people a means of connecting with you directly one-to-one, that person is now in your sales pipeline. You now get to have a conversation with that person anytime you want to, because you have direct contact information. You're not just trying to blast a message out to your audience as a whole. You get to control the flow of information with this person. You can address objectives. So we really want to have that moment where somebody goes from being anonymous to being known to us specifically. And that brings us to generating sales, goal number 5. I believe this is a byproduct of doing the first 4 things well. So if you've built that brand, reputation, and community, and then you gave people a way to connect with you directly, now they're in your sales pipeline and you can generate a sale from them. You can stay in front of them. You can have a one-to-one conversation, however long that takes, depending on what your product or service is. And you can ultimately turn that person into a revenue source, a sale, or maybe a referral source for somebody else to be brought into the pipeline. So generating sales, to me, like I said, is a byproduct. And here's the thing, as marketers, we know, I know, you know, that you're marketing your business online because you want to make money. You're there because you want to bring in new leads and you want to get new customers. That's why you're there. Obviously, you're not doing this for fun. You're doing this for your business. But in a very counterintuitive way, if you approach all of online marketing just trying to sell all the time, sell, everything's a picture and a price tag, everything is about trying to get people to buy something right now, that usually drives people away, which on most of these different tools we'll talk about today is going to hurt you down the road. So if we're trying to build a long-term plan that's going to work, we need to get people engaged with our businesses online. That's what online marketing ultimately ends up being all about. And it's something to bear in mind that there's, for some tools more than others, a slower burn. And so we really have to have ways to create engagement, to make people feel that we're not going to solicit them all the time, but to give them a means of connecting with us. And that's a real trick. We have to be very patient, a lot more patient with online marketing than we might be in other spaces. But if you can be patient, you'll probably get more from it. So I'm going to talk about this a lot more in the later sections, so you get ideas on how to do this. But this kind of gives you a breakdown of some of the different goals that you could potentially have when you're marketing online. So the question really becomes, which of these goals are you trying to achieve in the different places where you market? And, if you can think about that and have that in mind when you go to build out a plan for how you'll market there, you're going to be way more successful down the road because you'll see all the different ways that it can be helping your business. But I do want to start getting into the details here. Knowing that we have these overall goals, we want to start thinking about how we use the different tools, the 5 different tools to get there. So let's start by looking at your website. What does a website do for you? So first of all, every tool is going to have a slide that looks kind of like this. These are great ones to print out later as a resource once you get access to the slide deck, because this is going to show those quick bullet points to sum up what each of those tools can do. And in each of the sections, I'm going to expand on all these bullet points a little bit more. So I just wanted to set that part up for you. But what can a website do for your business? Here's what we'll talk about. We're going to talk about how it connects your marketing and your offerings, about how it shows all your content and assets in one place, about how it illustrates what sets your business apart, about how it draws new audiences through search engine traffic, and how it can be a truth teller of marketing and analytics for your business. So a goal of your website is that if you can get your target market, your audience, or any visitor to come to your website, can you give them enough information where they want to stay, they want to explore your business, they want to explore its offerings, and in the process, they get comfortable with you? And can you get that to happen as quickly as possible? Right? This is kind of harkening back to what I said about your brand. It's hard to get people there, but once you get them there, can they feel like they know you before they've left? Now, here's a visual that I find really handy for a website. I think of it as the central hub of all of your online marketing. This is where everything connects. So if you think about, a train system, if you think about all the different lines that can go into an overall map of a train system. If you wanted to go somewhere that was pretty far away from where you are, what gives you the most options on how to get there, right? If you were at a central hub where you've got many different platforms with many different train lines going in many different directions, you've got a lot more options. You're starting from the same place, they're all connected in some way, and yet, you know, you have multiple different pathways you could go from there that could be right for you. If you're trying to get somewhere and you're in the middle of a line or you're at the end of the line, the only options you have are the other stations that are on that line. But if you want to have the most options available to you, and if you really want to be able to make choices that are right for you, you're going to get yourself to one of these hubs where you've got multiple platforms. And it's kind of the same thing with your website. You know, with your website, there are parts of your online marketing plan that are meant to get you from point A to point B, like a train line. But your website is where you can tell people about everything that's going on so they can decide what the right next step is for them, where the right fit is for them. So that's a pretty big advantage with your website, because you get to give people visibility to a lot of things that are happening. Also, your website is a place to show what makes your business unique. Look, whatever business you have, chances are you probably have a competitor or somebody else who does something maybe a little bit similar to yours. So you want to be able to show what makes you different. And I assure you, everybody has something that makes their business different. You are different, right? Your values could be different. There could be slight nuances in your offerings. There could be a difference in how you deliver them. There could be a difference in how you communicate. There's so many different things that could make your business unique. And so your website is a chance to show that. Not just tell people, but really show that in how you're talking in that space and what you're promising, what you're offering, to really make it clear to them what sets your business apart. So we'll talk a little bit more about this when we get to the social media section, because that was a good place to sort of wrap up some ideas around communicating your brand. But this is an advantage that you have with your website. Now, if that's going to be a goal, it's really important that your website speaks to your target market. A lot of times as business owners, we're making decisions about what we like, and that actually has not very much to do with it. Your brand, everything you're saying needs to resonate with your target market first. And then if you like it, that's a secondary great thing to have happen. But, they need to know that they're in the right place. They need to know that you are the right business. Your business is the right business for them to be looking at for these products and services. And so we need to communicate that as effectively as possible. Now, I know that I'm going to end up using the words target market a few times here, so let me put a quick definition on that. Your target markets are the people who would be most likely to be interested in your product, your service, your program, your idea, whatever it is you're selling. These are the people who would be likely to buy it. Really important you understand this, because online marketing seemingly gives us access to millions of people. There are millions of people on all these different platforms we're using, but that doesn't really matter. You just need to speak to your target market and the people who are there. So everything that we talk about today, all of the different tools, you want to reach this audience for your business. And when it comes to your website, you're going to want to make sure that you've structured your website in a way that will resonate with your target market. Whatever page they land on your website first, they're going to make a quick decision. Does this feel like this website is for me? Does this business feel like it's for me? Or no? Because if they decide no, in a second or two, they'll just leave your website. But if you've structured your website in a way that can make your target market feel comfortable, if you've got multiple target markets, if you can have different landing pages where you can get each target market to the right one first, so that they're then realizing, yes, this is the right place for me. Oh, and look at all this other stuff you've got. So the more you understand about your business and who your different audiences are, the more you can think about how your website is structured so that everybody can have that experience when they get to that first landing page of your site. Now, I told you I wasn't going to spend very much time talking about SEO. I'm talking about it as a concept here in terms of not so much advertising as how you've built your website. So with your website, you have an opportunity in the back end to help Google or other search engines understand what your website is about. You get to set keywords, you get to set text for pictures, you get to set these different things that help alert search engines to what your website is actually about, so that the pages of your website can potentially rank on those search engines. So if somebody does a search on Google, they may potentially come up with your website, and that can attract brand new traffic, people who didn't know they were looking for your business, but were looking for your products and services, and you happen to be one of the businesses that provides it, and now they've discovered that. So in addition to the fact that websites are a great landing place for the people who already knew something about you, it's also a place where you can get brand new people to you. I'll mention a little bit more about this when we get to the blogs part, but just a little bit. Now, one more thing I want you to be aware of for websites is that it's a place where it can be a truth teller of analytics. So, sometimes people say, oh, you should market here, or you should advertise here. And you'll think, how will I know if it's working? Well, on your website, there are stats that you can look for to see where visitors are coming from, for example. So I've got a blog here called 3 Stats to Look For to Help Your Marketing. And this is one that kind of breaks down a few different types of stats that you can look for in your website analytics to see what's working for you, what the behavior of your audience is, where they're coming from. How can you decide what of the rest of your marketing is actually working for you? So again, you'll want to get access to the full slide deck after this, so you can get these separate links so that you can make an easy click to get over to them. But almost every single one of the sections has something that I've given you for additional reading along the way. Now, one more thing that I want you to be aware of, and look, I always talk about marketing on a budget, but if you do have any money that you're prepared to put into marketing, and you can invest in only one place in your marketing plan, this would be it, because I hope you're getting a sense of how much heavy lifting your website can potentially do for your business. If you've constructed your website well, it can do all of these things for you. If you haven't, it won't do these things for you. You'll see a really big difference in what's happening in your business if your website is in fact accomplishing all of these goals for you. So if you need support in creating a website that will get you there, this is the one place that you might invest, or at least ask for help. A lot of people take the DIY website approach, and that's often not a good solution if you're not able to get some of these things in motion. And in fact, as we get further along in this presentation, and I start talking about some of the other tools, you're going to be thinking about other things that you could potentially add to your website that, if you don't have the technical know-how, but you can get somebody else to help you set it up. It's a one-time project, it's good to go, and it's probably going to help you get a lot more from your marketing later. So I just wanted to give you that caveat up front here. And it's something for you to think about as you think about your marketing plan and the resources that you have to execute it. Now, having said that, I want to share a little bit about blogs before we take questions on these sections. So with blogs, what can a blog do for your business? Well, first of all, it's going to act as a magnet for your website. It's going to keep your website fresh and updated. It'll help you trigger keyword phrases for search rankings. It's going to help you position your business with authority, and it'll also help you tell the story of your business. So let's unpack this a little bit more. I love metaphors, right? So I like to think of a blog as being a website magnet. It gives visitors a reason to come visit you and explore something about your business. It's you putting thoughts out there, and your thoughts could be interesting to people. So it's a reason for them to keep coming back and learning more about the new things that you have to say. And I'm going to expand on this a little bit as we keep talking about this, the blog tool. But one of the things I want you to think about is, if you're Google, if you're Bing, if you're a search engine out there, search engines are a business too. They want to direct us to what's most relevant, because they have a business model. They want businesses to be advertising. They have different ways they can potentially make money from people coming back and continuing to ask questions on their search engine. So if, let's say we're talking about Google, if you put a question or query into Google, they want to give you an answer that's going to be an answer that feels satisfying to you, because they want you to come back. They want everybody to come back. So they're looking for relevance. going to be really hard for your website to be deemed relevant if it hasn't been updated in years, right? So if you're thinking about how they make decisions on what they rank, that's actually kind of complicated. There's a little bit mysterious, actually. But at the end of the day, it would make sense, wouldn't it? If they're looking at two different websites side by side, they both seem to have good information about a certain topic or keyword, but this one was last updated 10 years ago, and this one was last updated yesterday. You might think the one that was updated yesterday is more relevant because, how could the one updated 10 years ago still be current? Things are changing so quickly. So having fresh material on your website is a clue for Google, is a clue for search engines. Now, think about that. When we look at the standard pages of our websites, there are certain pages that are pretty common, right? There's a home page. There might be an about page. You might have a products or services page or multiple pages. You probably have a contact page somewhere on your site. But which of those things really need to be changed? Your home page, how often do you need to change what you're saying there? Your about page, unless you've got like a new accolade you want to add, how often do you change that? Products and services. For some people, you do have seasonal products or new lines that come out. But for some of us, you put your services or your products up there once and it never changes. Contact information. Unless you've changed your phone number or your email, you probably won't change that very often either. So the standard website pages don't allow a lot of room for keeping them updated and fresh. But blogs do, which is why it's nice to be able to have a place to put that new content. Now, I told you I wasn't going to talk a lot about SEO, and that's why I'm keeping it super simple here. This is more about what's happening on the back end of your site than about paying for advertising. When it comes to on-page SEO, if you have created a blog about one of your products and services, for example, and you have set in the back end, here's the keyword that we're trying to target, and it's maybe one of your specific products or services. Now you're giving this possibility for a search engine to attract somebody just for that purpose to your website to discover your whole business. So an example, let's say you want to make banana bread. So you go to a search engine and you look up best banana bread or banana bread recipe, and you find a whole listing of results, and you find one that you really want to try. You find a website that has a banana bread recipe that looks pretty great. You make it, it's awesome. And now you think, wow, that was great. I wonder what other recipes they've got on here that I could try out. So by finding this banana bread recipe, you just discovered the whole website and all the rest of its recipes. So that's what can happen for you with your products and services, with having a blog on your site. It's one of the things that you get to do where you can specifically attract new segments of your market to discover the rest of what you offer as well. Now, the other thing that I want to say about this is that as you think about what you want to say about your business, when you think about how you want to communicate a blog, this is your chance to wear a PR hat for your business. So thinking about those objectives we have earlier, there are some paths for blog content here. You could talk about the story, the brand, the persona of your business. You can talk about the expertise, the reputation. You could do both if you wanted to. You could find ways to blend those things, but those tend to be angles that we'll take in content that we share. So if you think about this, what could you say in a blog? Well, there are some concerns that often come up from people. So I've got two of my own blogs that I'm going to share with you that you can read after this once you've got access to the slide deck. And it'll give you hopefully a way to address two of the most common concerns I get. One, blogs don't have to be articles. If you hate the idea of sitting down and writing, if you hate the idea of a blinking cursor, there are lots of different forms a blog can take that could be more appropriate for your business. So that top blog gives you ideas. If you're thinking, I can think of maybe one or two things to say in a blog, but can I think of something to say for years on end? Maybe you're worried that writer's block is going to become an issue for you at some point. So I've got a whole blog about different ways to overcome writer's block and to generate a lot of blog ideas quickly about your business that you can be pulling from for years. So those are two that you'll want to check out if you have any of those concerns about your business. Now, I wanted to stop down here and take any questions on these earlier sections before we move on to social media, because to me, it feels like there's sort of a natural break here. So take a moment. If you have a question, feel free to write it into the chat. If you want to raise your hand, if you want, I'll ask Lindsay to help me with that piece to manage that if she is available to do so. But yeah, I'm just sort of filibustering here to give you a little bit of time to ask a question if that's something that you want to do at this point. Remember, we talked about the objectives. We talked about websites, and we talked about blogs so far. So with social media, newsletters, and lead magnets still ahead, we'll look at those other things later. Let's address the questions you have now. I'm going to start with one from Wendy. Does it help SEO if you name your pictures with relevant keywords instead of leaving it as IMG123, for example? Answer there is yes. So alt text is a great place to make sure that you've got, name your pictures and also label them in alt text when you're adding a picture into your website. Hopefully you'll see that when you add the media into the website as well. And think about it. Again, you're giving a search engine lots and lots of clues about the relevance of everything on your page. If you've got text copy on your page, obviously they can see keywords coming up there. But if you've been loading your page with pictures, they have no idea what that is unless you tell them what it is. So, if you have a name of the picture that's attached to your product or service, it's just one more clue that you're giving that this page is loaded with great content about the specific keyword that you've chosen. So that's a great question and a really specific one. Thank you for asking that, Wendy. But yeah, if there are any other questions as we're looking at these particular topics, feel free to jump in with that. And I will also take a moment to pause in case somebody wants to ask a question verbally too.
Yeah, I don't see any questions in the Q&A either.
Awesome. Okay, so we're covering it.
That's right.
I love it. I just did want to give enough time for somebody to write a question in case they're still getting that into the chat. But again, looking at the website and the blog piece first, that's sort of the backbone of those tools. And we're going to keep moving on and talk about some of the things that you can add into the process as well. I have a question here from April. What do you suggest we start with building a website? I might interpret this question wrong. So if I do, feel free to clarify it. But when it comes to starting with the process of building a website, actually the first thing that I would recommend is start thinking about your structure, thinking about the different target markets you're trying to reach, think about what pages you're going to need, think about if I have 5 target markets, how can I get each of them to land on a page that's going to feel specific to them? And how can I make that make sense in my website? So when you start thinking about that framework, yeah, web designer can help, but it helps if you've given thought to who you're trying to reach. It also helps if you've given thought to your brand, what your voice is, how you want to come across. So when I worked with a web designer, I came to them with information about my target markets, some information about what types of pages needed to be on my site. And then I might have said something like, I want to come across as, and I might have given them several different adjectives. I would hand them my logo and any elements of style that I already had. So you'll want to compile all of that, whether you're working with a web designer or not, because that gives you all the pieces of the puzzle you're going to need to put that puzzle together later. So that's something to think about for sure. Now, if the question is coming from a standpoint of like, how do you choose a platform? There are a lot of different website platforms out there. Right. So as far as resources that are budget friendly is the question that I'm getting from April. Yeah, depending on whether you have money to spend or not, there's certainly tools out there. When you look at building a website, you can sort of buy the platform that you're on, or you can kind of rent the platform that you're on. So the ones that you can rent generally come across as less expensive. And so, you may find that there are things that are easier, tools like maybe Wix or Squarespace, things like that might be easier places if you're looking for a DIY solution versus, if you have a web designer who's building out something custom on a WordPress website, you're probably going to want somebody more experienced with a platform like that. So work with what you've got to put the best resources out there for your community that you can. And I've got a question from Heidi as well. Let's see. Can you give some more examples of building community, or will that be discussed later in the presentation? We'll talk about building community as we go along. Websites and blogs are tricky in terms of building community, in that you're putting content out there and there's not always a lot of places to engage with people directly. So you could do that if you had, for example, some sort of a forum on your website, but communicating directly with people might come across a little bit more, let's say, in something like social media. But also it comes across offline, like you could potentially be going out and networking with people, offline, and that can bring people to your site. You can potentially email other businesses that could be allies for you, and you could start getting people to come back to your site. I know something that I did was I emailed tons of people at the start of my business to alert them to some of the resources that I had on my site that give marketing information. And that got a lot of new people coming to my site and signing up for things. So that's something to think about. There's both online and offline methods of building community, but we'll get into that more as we go along too. I'll take a couple more questions here before we jump forward into social media. So Tanya says, before being ready to build a website, what other options can we use instead beside Facebook? To be totally honest with you, Tanya, there isn't really I'm going to say, yes, I know that we're all looking for options within our means, but also there isn't really another substitute. Social media platforms are things you don't own. Any of them can change their terms and conditions at any time. Any of them only give you access to the people who are on that platform. So having your own website is the one thing that you can have, or anything that you can build that anybody can come to, whether they've opted into some platform or not. Having that available as a calling card for your business, there isn't exactly a substitute for it that's perfect. So I want to be really transparent with that, which is why I start with website first in this section. Are there other things that you can use in a rudimentary way before you have a website? Sure, but is it risky? It is, because you don't own those platforms. So, if you can find a way to use a website as a website, that's your ideal scenario. There's a lot of ways to do that. Let's see. And then, okay, I think we've addressed the questions for now. And I see the ASB TDC has put some really great resource links in the chat. So be sure to check those out. But let's keep moving into the social media part of this, and you'll be able to ask more questions about all these things as we keep going forward. But great questions so far. I love the way you're all really thinking about how to use this information for your business. So when it comes to social media, what can social media do for your business? First of all, it can convey personality. It can sell without selling, can establish social proof and community, can drive traffic where you want it to go, and it can generate leads for your business. So let's dig into this. I'm going to spend a little bit more time talking about some of the brand elements here, but I want you to bear in mind that the things that I'm saying about brand here all pretty much translate to the other tools as well. This just was a good place to talk about them all together. So when it comes to showcasing personality, I've already said that if you can get somebody to land on any of these tools, can you get them to feel like they've gotten to know your business? Well, what does that mean? What does the personality of your business mean? How do you construct it? What is it made up of? Well, I'm going to give you two different things that you can think about for your own business that may help influence your business brand or personality. So the first thing is values. These are the guiding principles of how your business operates. These aren't just a couple words you put on the about page of your website and walk away from them. This is how you're going to show up time and time again for your audience, both in how you communicate and how you conduct business. If there are multiple people that they'll interface with in your business, these are going to be the values all of these people represent in their communications with your customers. So you can see some examples of values words here. It's not a comprehensive list, but if you can start planting some flags and making decisions about how you want to come across, it helps inform you of what type of information and how you're going to put it out there. So here are a couple of examples. I'm going to pull examples from Facebook here. When it comes to having a strong value set, let's look, for example, at something like Rolls-Royce. I love using examples for companies that don't try to market to me, because it's always interesting to see what they're doing and how they talk differently to their people. So Rolls-Royce says, the finest cuisine is presented in the grandest of settings, adding the finishing touch to every Rolls-Royce experience. Beautiful, one sentence, but perfect copy. They've got this 3 gorgeous images, completely different, but yet equally gorgeous images. And I think about what I know about this brand, and I think about what I see here. And the words that come to my mind are luxury or prestige. And so if that's what I'm thinking this business is, I'm going to be expecting that everything that I see from them is going to potentially, be part of the information that I'm going to get from them later as well. Now, if we look at something like the Catholic company, we've got a morning offering. Good morning, read today's #morning offering email. This offering, you could read it in just a matter of, let's say, a couple seconds, really. But I'm looking at this and I see faith, and I'm going to expect that everything that I see from them is going to be about faith. So if that's a word that comes up for you, you're going to want to lean into that. If this were your business, you'd want to lean into it in all your future messaging. Now, another tool that we have is something like tone, your style of communicating with the audience, how your voice sounds. There's a lot of businesses that can have similar value sets, but they may talk differently. So how you talk differently or how you write differently may be what attracts people. And these tone words are some examples of tones, but there's so many out there that you can decide on. So let's look at how tone can influence us from a couple different examples. We've got one from NASA, right? Once launched on Monday, NASA's Transiting Exoplanet Survey satellite tests will collect 27 gigabytes of data per day, searching that, right, you get the idea. This is really dry, factual information. There's a lot of ways that you can deliver factual information. They went this direction with it, right? So if you're interested in reading what NASA has to say, you're going to expect more of this type of tone in the future. I'm going to show you a really different one though. Couldn't be more different. We've got Old Spice. Being manly isn't about not showing emotion or being super tough. It's about watching branded live streams that teach you lessons on modern masculinity. I mean, there's a lot of specific things about this tone, right? You love it, you hate it, whatever it is. You know what you're going to get when you're getting a tone like this. And you're going to expect that this is how they're going to continue talking to people over time. So a good tone is going to attract the people you want to attract. And it may leave some people out that you don't want to attract. So that is totally fine too. If you feel like there's enough people in the pool of people you want to attract to make the revenue you need for your business, awesome. Leaning into that tone helps people want to flock to your community and see what you have to say next. Now, with all of this in mind, let's talk about how this hangs together. A winning approach for social media and for so many of these different online marketing platforms is selling without selling. You can see examples and almost use my platforms as a case study if you want to, but there are certain things that you can do that I don't do a ton of that you could potentially lean into emotions or senses with your marketing. And that's a way to get people thinking about your business without, really selling to them. I use things like concepts and ideas. I use things like talking about my value system. Can you get people to be attracted to your business because they want to talk with you, not just because you're selling to them all the time? So if you're leaning into values and you're leaning into tone and you're thinking about how am I going to create a conversation with you as my first goal, and then sell to you later, perhaps, you can look for different ways to do that with that primary goal of engagement first. And it's probably going to create much better results for your business. So that's something to think about in the context of both social media and really most of these other tools as well. How can you engage with people instead of just selling to all the time? I think of this as like if I walk past a bakery and I smell a cookie, the smell of the cookie is what makes me want to walk into the bakery and maybe buy something from them. It's that smell that drew me in, not their hard selling to me that drew me in. So how can you use, let's say, social media in that same way? Now, We've also got social proof and community. Reputation building and community can happen here. Social proof can look like, yeah, we've got this many followers, we've got this many people engaging on our pages, but it's also about going out, connecting with people and bringing them back in. But you can do all of this in the context of the content that you're putting out there. So I wanted to give you some examples of how you can think about what you say that can give people the reputation and start to help build that community for you. So what could social proof or community building even look like for your business? Here are some examples. Let's say you're talking about your business. You can have little throwaway lines or, beginnings of sentences that address number of staff you have, number of years you've been in business, maybe number of clients or number of projects that you've taken on if you don't have a lot of clients, but they keep coming back. It could be something more overt, like here are my followers, my visitors, my engagement stats. That stuff is usually pretty visible, but it could also be stuff that isn't, like here's a community project that we did recently, and really start involving people that way, tagging those community groups. It could be that you talk about awards that you won or number of awards that you won, and you can thank your community for being part of helping you get there if you want. It could be that you talk about a speaking gig that you've got or content that you have that's been published somewhere else. It could be that you've supported a charity and you want to talk about that. It could be that you have testimonials or referrals that have come across. It could be that you've got community partners you want to highlight. And you'll notice some of these things allow you to also tag other businesses and engage with them as well to help start bringing in their community too. So these are some examples of things you could potentially utilize. Now, one more thing that I want to mention about social media is that it gives you a pathway, an option to start setting pathways for people outside of social media. So they're here with you on social media. Where do you want them to go next? What's the next place you want to get to so that they're not necessarily, and I just wanted to be really clear before I keep going that this is an hour and a half session, I believe. So I was building towards that, but if any of you were only able to be here for 1 hour, the recording will be longer than that. So please feel free to come back to it later if you need it. But I just wanted to make sure I said that in case anybody else has the question that I'm getting right now in the chat. But I'm going to go back to the content. And if you feel like you're needing to get to somewhere else, come back and watch the recording later, because there's so much good information in the back half or the back part of this session. So when it comes to driving traffic, this is really important about social media. Make sure that you're not just keeping people on social media forever. Get them out to other locations. You don't own any of these social media platforms. They're their own business model. They can be glitchy. They can change terms and conditions. So get people to other locations, to other parts of your online marketing plans so that you can be sure that you'll be able to keep nurturing them no matter what, which means you could get them to a website. You could get them to a blog. You could get them to your lead magnet or a newsletter sign up. We're going to talk more about those other two things right after this. So that's where you're potentially sending your audience next. And we want to make sure we give them those places to go, because that's where you get that option to generate leads, to get people into those one-to-one conversations. When you're not just talking to the masses on social media, you're getting them to another location where you can have that one-to-one conversation. So as we close out this piece, is social media mandatory is my question. And my answer, and this may be where some people disagree with me, but I think it's not mandatory. It does potentially a lot of great things for your business, but there are a lot of different ways that you can do those things. There are a lot of ways that you can build community offline as well. There are ways that you can put your brand out there through blogs, for example. There are a lot of different tools that you can use to do the types of things that social media does for your business. So here's what I want you to understand. If you've got time to put into social media, if you've got time to put some content out there and to regularly and consistently engage with the people who are on your page and people that you want to bring to your page, social media can be absolutely wonderful. If, however, you don't have time to do that, if you're going to post really sporadically, and then you're going to run, you're not going to be able to have conversations and be social there, you might want to consider something offline or something else as a way to find new leads and bring them to your website and bring them to your blog and get them to sign up for your email list. You might want to use the other 4 tools and find other ways to get the social media pieces fulfilled within your marketing plan. So I want you to think about that, because this tends to be a radical idea for a lot of people. But in reality, if social media is meant to be social, and I know a lot of people don't have the time to put into that. So think about that in an honest way when you're constructing your own marketing plan. Does social media have a place for you? Great, use it well. And if you feel like it's really overwhelming to you and you're not going to be able to use it consistently, how can you fulfill the goals that you have that you would have used there? How can you fulfill them in other ways? So I want you to think about that. And I want to say we have a winner here, because I've asked this question before and I've never had somebody answer social media, but we did in this session. So I absolutely love that, we were willing to think this way, and, just consider that. So I wanted to take a couple minutes here to see if you have questions about social media specifically before we head into newsletters and lead magnets. And I'll give a moment here so that if you're typing into the chat, for example, that you have a moment to be able to do that. But I already have a question. Teresa says, if social media is used, should posts be done with a business page within social media or on a personal page or a channel? Really good question. It should be done on a business page. Now, I know that every platform works a little differently. So let's say we're taking Facebook, for example. You're going to want to create a business page for that. I know you're not going to get very much reach from that. They've throttled reach for business pages over time. But if you're using your personal page as a business page, they could at any point tell you you're violating the terms and conditions of their platform and yank your page altogether. So all of the work that you've done to build an audience there could be wiped out in a day. So yeah, using a business page on that platform in particular may not be as satisfying, but it's within the rules. So I know there are people who would do it in other ways, and they're really playing a risky game. So wherever you can, though, try to have your profile name be your business name, so that when you're engaging, people see that that's your brand. It's important. That's why you're marketing your business, not just yourself. Now, Heidi asked, do you have suggestions for dealing with negative comments on a business's social media page? She doesn't have any social media to have negative comments yet, but she's curious. First of all, great question. First of all, the answer is deal with the negative comments. Don't leave them undealt with. That's your opportunity to have a customer service spin and to have a good customer service in general. So address their concern. If you feel you need to take it offline, take it offline. Let them know that you hear them. If somebody has a really good question, if somebody has a negative comment that's actually just an opportunity for you to share what your business and your products and services actually are, use that as a space to say, oh, I'm so sorry you had that experience. This product is meant for blah, 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 blah. And it helps inform other people as well. So there's ways to put spin on it. Just make sure you do address them. I've got another question here from Sherry. What are your thoughts about the branching social media channels such as MeWe, Telegram, et cetera? Is it worth it to do the work across multiple platforms? This is really going to be about what is realistic for the time that you have, right? To me, as a marketer, it's not that impressive if somebody's on everything, if they seem to be engaging with nobody in every location and only posting sporadically. I'd rather see you, if you're going to be on social media, on 1 or 2 platforms that you're doing a really good job engaging on them. And then, you can potentially make it look like you're popular there versus feeling like you're spread too thin. You can also have, social media platform, maybe you have a social media platform you engage on and you're spending time at networking events or doing something offline. There's like a real hybrid solution we can take here. So it's about being realistic with your time. Now, I'll take one more question about this before we move on as well. Let's see, because I know there might be more questions later, but we'll have a little bit more time for questions at the end. How often should we post or engage on social media? From April. Great question. How often should we post or engage on social media? This is again going to go back to what's realistic. if you could, can you do 3 times a week? Can you do once a day? Can you, be honest first about what you're going to be able to maintain consistently. If your answer is, I can post once every other week, do a blog on your website, send it out to your email list as a newsletter. Social media might not be the place for you, because the other part of the question you didn't ask was, yes, I want you to post, but I also want you to spend time having conversations with people off of your page to bring people back to your page. So if you don't have a lot of time to put to that, I try to give it an even split of the amount of time I'm doing for each of those things. So be realistic upfront about how much time you really think you're going to be able to give. And if that feels like enough to warrant being on social media, then that's where to be. So these are great questions. I know we have at least one more, but I'm going to move into the last 2 sections here. Feel free to save any questions that you still have on this one towards the very end. So with newsletters, let's just tackle this for a moment. What does a newsletter do? Because I've mentioned it a few times for your business. Helps warm your audience, gives you more predictable reach, can balance value with harder selling. It can offer really powerful analytics that directly feed into your sales process. So let's talk about this more. Your newsletter can warm your audience. For some of our businesses, people don't have as much urgency around buying what we sell. So if somebody hears about you, can you keep them with you until that moment when they are ready to buy something from you? In my business, that can be years. In your business, it could be days, it could be months. You don't know until you really start tracking people. But at that point when they're ready, are they still thinking of you for that product or service? This is why we want to keep them warm. And this leans into a general sales principle known as the rule of 7, which says it takes at least 7 touches to convert a lead into a sale, or to warm leads or build trust enough where if you put a call to action in front of somebody, they may be more likely to accept it. For some of our businesses, we'll need a lot more than 7 touches, especially if you're meeting people online and you've never met them face to face. So think about how a newsletter allows you to get those touch points in over time in a way that's touching everybody in your audience all at once. This can be a really handy tool. And I'm not to scare you with this, but with my own results, like I have a weekly marketing tip of the week newsletter that I send out to my audience every single week. And I have people who call me up and say, Melissa, I've been reading your newsletter for a year, 2 years, and I'm ready to work with you now. That's a lot of touch points. But I was able to do it because I was reaching them through a newsletter and I was reaching everybody at once. So this is something that you might want to think about, especially if you've got a business that has less urgency for your clients behind it. You may find that people hover around your business for a while and you want them to still be thinking about you when they're ready. Now, the other great thing about newsletters is that comparatively, compared to other types of online marketing, you're probably going to get better reach. You're probably going to get better open and click rates from what you put out there. On a social media post, you put out a post, you might not get a whole lot of people who see it. With your newsletter, maybe you get 20% of your subscribers to see it. And you can track, who's clicking on it as well. And so you're likely to get slightly better percentages, maybe really better percentages with newsletters. So that's nice. People are seeing what you put out there. The other great thing is that this is a place where you can sell a little harder. If you give them some value-driven content and they know to expect that in their newsletter, once they've opened it, you've also potentially got something that you're selling. They're still feeling the value because they got that newsletter and there was value plus something you were selling. So it gives you a chance to mix your content just a little bit more. One other thing that I love about newsletters is that although it does allow you to track the performance of a content, like pretty much every other online marketing tool lets you do, this content reached this many people in this many places. These were, this many were female, this many were male. It lets you see some of those general things, but it goes a step further and it lets you see the behavior of specific subscribers. So you can see exactly who opened, exactly who clicked on most platforms, and that can help feed your sales process. What would you do if you knew somebody was really engaged with your business? So there's a blog that I've written that I would love for you to see, Uses for Analytics. It's called Magical Marketing, Using Your Newsletter Analytics. As you can see, I'm a real newsletter nerd. I'm trying to reel myself in here. This one is all about some different ways you can use the analytics that you get, especially around knowing who your subscribers are and how they're behaving, that can be useful for you in your sales process directly. So be sure to check that one out because I've got a lot of fun things to say about newsletters. I wanted to close out though by talking about lead magnets, which I know, well, let's put it this way. This is the puzzle piece that's missing for almost everybody. And it's missing because most of us don't even know what it is, right? So when I say lead magnet, you might have heard of something like an opt-in or a freebie. Sometimes we use those words interchangeably. So let's talk about lead magnets because these are so valuable and hardly anybody has them. And yet they can really make a difference for your business. So what does a lead magnet do, first of all? Well, first of all, I'll define it. A lead magnet is something that people can sign up for that is free to them, but gives you their contact information. Online, it's usually going to be their email address to put you straight onto your email list. But when you think about offline, like if you've ever been to like an event that had a fishbowl and they said, drop your business card in for a chance to win this prize. That's actually a lead magnet. They're collecting your information for a chance to get immediate value out of it. So online, it tends to be like, download this thing, put your email address in, and we'll give it to you. Having said that, so what does a lead magnet do for your business? It potentially links your website and your newsletter. It gives leads a reason to opt into your list beyond just, I'm going to email you a bunch. It establishes value with your audience and builds some of that trust that you're looking for. And honestly, there are just flat out more ways to market a lead magnet depending on what your lead magnet is. So let's break this down a little bit more. Here's why this is so important. If you've got people visiting your website, if you had 1,000 people come to your website tomorrow, you know who none of those people are unless they buy something, right? So can you give them an easier way, a way that has less resistance to it, to make themselves known to you? They're anonymous until they sign up for something. So if you can give them something free to sign up for, will more people do it so that you know who they are and you can keep marketing to them? We want to get people out of the shadows and into the light. We want to be able to remarket to those people in a way that we can control. So having them sign up for something is a great way to do that. This makes it a connection between the marketing and the sales strategy. That lead magnet is where you go from, you're putting a marketing message out to the masses, the faceless masses. And now all of a sudden you start identifying some of those people so you can have a one-to-one conversation. I hope you're seeing a value to that already, even as I'm talking about it. Wouldn't it be nice to know who you're talking to? A goal here. For some people, it's like, if I keep selling to a high volume of people, some percentage of people are going to accept what I put out there. That's one approach. Another approach, which works really well with a lead magnet, is if I can get you to sign up for something free, I can send you some emails, some newsletters, and eventually I can get you to buy something paid. So if I can kind of get you into a system here now, I've got you on my list and I'm going to keep reaching out to you. Maybe I've created an email sequence or a newsletter, and hopefully along the way, I'm going to convert you into, a paying customer, a paying client. So there's sort of like a stepping stone impact that you can have with something like this. So at the end of the day, a lead magnet is a reason for an introduction, right? You can say, sign up for my newsletter all day long, but the person on the other end has no idea what's in your newsletter. They don't necessarily know if it's going to be valuable content for them. Your lead magnet is saying, here's the valuable content that I'm going to give you. It's going to be a checklist. It's going to be an ebook. It's going to be a coupon. It's going to be, a quiz. There's so many different types of things that you can do. And they'll say, oh, I immediately see value to this thing. This is why I'm going to give you my details. And now that gives you sort of a chance to discover your business and then discover the longer term value over time as they continue to be on your newsletter list. So, I keep doing this motion, and that's really what you're trying to do. You're wanting to generate forward momentum with everybody on your list. And you can't do that with people if they're not on your list, right? So this is a way to find out who's hovering, get them into your community, and just start bringing them all forward as a unit. The one other thing that I want to say about this is that lead magnets, if they're evergreen, that marketing is easier to stretch. There's only so many ways you can say, sign up for my newsletter, which you can still have people sign up for your newsletter. But with a lead magnet, you can say, sign up for my lead magnet. You can say it's the 1-year anniversary of my lead magnet. I just had somebody from South Africa download my lead magnet. There's all these different ways you can celebrate. I just had my 1,000th download on my lead magnet. There's so many different angles to talk about this piece of content or this value driven thing that you've given to your audience. So it just gives you a little bit more room to play in your marketing language. So having said all that, I do want to make sure I save a little time here at the end for any final questions about all of these things. Start getting your questions in. But just a reminder, online marketing is a long-term strategy. I hope you're kind of seeing that if you've got a framework set up in the long term, you've got a closed system that you're really moving people through and hopefully not letting them escape through the holes of a sieve. So if you've got a long-term approach in mind, chances are down the road, you'll be very happy you set it up. Now, if you have questions, here are the topics we covered. We talked about core strategy, talked about websites and blogs, social media, newsletters, lead magnets, any of it's fair game in these last 10 minutes. As you're getting those questions in, I'll keep looking for them, but a reminder about 2 of the upcoming sessions. On January 26th from 12 to 1, we've got a talk about profiting with partnership marketing. Really fun one if you're looking for, building some new relationships going into the new year that you can hopefully generate more referrals for your business. February 9th, we'll talk about how to win at social media, even with no budget, 12 to 1 p.m. Central. Again, those are back to 1 hour. Hopefully today's session helps you see where social media fits in to your plans. And if it does, that's a great one to take a deep dive into that topic. So I want to make sure I save time for questions here. I've got some great ones coming in. I also wanted to make sure that you have a link directly to the ASBTDC's page. In case you want to work with any coaches on this directly, that's a great place to land so that you can find a way to book a session. And I'll invite the ASBTDC to incorporate any information about that in the chat. And also, if you want to talk here at the end, you're welcome to do that as well. I'll try to take a few questions first because I know I've had some come in. There were some that we had from the social media section that I want to go back to. Heidi had said on social media, I'm sure this will be very business or target audience specific, but what platforms would you say are the most valuable? I think that's really about sort of matching up where your target markets actually are, where you're going to get the most visibility with them in conversation, and where does your brand get represented the best? If you have visuals that you want to lead with in your business, you're probably going to want platforms that let you use those visuals more. If you're trying to reach a specific target market, like a business to business audience, what platforms actually let you do that? Maybe it's something more like LinkedIn. If you're trying to reach a really young audience, are you going to be looking at, or a younger audience, are you going to be looking at things like Snapchat or TikTok? Are you going to be, are you looking, what demographic do you want to reach? What specific audience? And then think about where exactly on those platforms they're trying to communicate. Those are the only types of places you want to be. And from there, it's really about saying, how many of these places can I realistically be? So that is, in fact, a very nuanced answer for every business. And hopefully that gives you all a way of framing how you'll make that decision. Norma has asked, is it a good thing to utilize the marketplace on social media platforms such as Facebook versus purchasing through a direct website? This is another really interesting question because most of the time people don't go to a social media platform to buy stuff. They go there to engage. They go there for a lot of procrastination, finding out what people are up to. And at the end of the day, you don't own any social media platform, but your website can be yours. So you can potentially control what you put there. You can control how you take payment. So if you have an option to have a way that you own, that you can, display product and services and accept payment for it, I really encourage you to do that, because that's a more serious move for a business, right? If you're selling through these other marketplaces, you could probably make money from that, but do you control everything about how you display yourself, about how you show your brand? Do you control the terms and conditions of how you accept payment and how you use those platforms? The answer is no. It's just risky, right? So I want you to think about that. How much risk are you building into your business, and how much are you willing to take on? Heidi had asked, are there any other outlets for a newsletter, or are they limited to emails or mail? Let's see, outlets for newsletter. I think a lot of the time, when we talk about newsletters nowadays, we're talking about email. I know that there are some people, especially in the nonprofit world, there seems to be still sort of like a direct mail thing. This is a tricky time actually for something like that, because depending on where, people might have moved position in the last year or two. Some people aren't working from an office right now. So sending things out by mail could be a good approach. It could be a good approach if you're, trying to reach really like high level donors or high level customers. But an email newsletter is an interesting option if it's free and you get to track results. So just think about what you're really trying to gather, what information you're trying to gather, and how you want to have what kind of touch points you really want to have with your audience. I'm not sure if I can think of other ones outside. I mean, people do text marketing as well. That's the thing. If that's something your audience likes, some people love it, some people hate it. So that might be something that you also explore to see how your target market would respond to that. April, best ways to build an email list or other examples of lead magnets. I mean, I do think a lead magnet is an awfully good way to do it. It gives you something to continue to market. Just because you built it doesn't mean they all sign up for it, but it means you have something to continue to market pretty aggressively over time that they can sign up for free. So other examples of lead magnets, stuff like checklists or ebooks or quizzes. You could have not recipe books. You could have like coupon books. You could have one coupon that people sign up for. You could link up with other businesses in your area to see if you can create something jointly, perhaps. So there's kind of a lot of options for it. It's just sort of seeing what would be the right resource. Maybe there's like a video that you want to share that you could have an email gate for. I know we have a few questions left, but I also want to turn this back over to Lindsay in case she has anything she wants to say about the ASB TDC in the meantime.
I'm actually just going to post my closing in the comments so that you can use the last 2 minutes to answer questions.
Awesome. I love it. So yeah, just as a quick plug once more, if you want to really dive in deep on any of these great questions that are coming through, the ASB TDC has advisors that can help you with it. So, make sure to check out what Lindsay's posting right now in the chat if you're on with us live here. And if not, this is the link. It's up here on the screen. So, be sure to connect with the ASB TDC to schedule a time to talk. I'll take a few more questions here with the time we have left, though. Teresa says, is there a suggested length for newsletters? No, not necessarily. And I think that this is an area that you want to sort of play with what you're putting out there. If you can have something that is sort of value-driven content, that's great. But you might, for some people, they want to talk about here are some upcoming events or where you can find me. For some people, they'll want to highlight a great customer or a great member of their team or a great other business in the community. So you have a little bit of room to play here. But what's great about newsletters is that they show you what links people are clicking on, so you can see how far down people are getting. So if you start with something really long and you see you're kind of losing attention towards the bottom, maybe it's too long, right? So that's something you get to explore and experiment with as you go. Let's see, April, do you have experience with Launchcart? Not personally, I don't. Sorry about that. Norma, let's see, this may sound silly, but can you revisit the most important key ways to boost business reputation? I think there are a few things to consider here. There was certainly that social proof slide where it's like, oh, having been in business for 30 years now, like you can say things like that in the lead into your content and it just becomes this throwaway, but it's sort of planting these subliminal messages. But there's also the angle of, as you're building partnerships, for example, if you build relationships with other businesses in your community and you're able to sort of support each other online in some way that's visibly coming up for people, that's also something that starts to show reputation. So you kind of work with the tools that you have. If it's you saying what's great about yourself, that's an option that you've always got. If you can start, working with other businesses to boost each other's voice, that's an even better option because that's really going to get people's trust up even faster for you. So hopefully that gives you a few ideas. But that one slide will be one that you can come back to later in this slide deck that potentially will be really useful in generating some ideas for your business. let's see. I think I missed a question from Sally, and goodness, Sally, I'm looking to see where it was. To be honest with you, I did in fact miss it. So if you want to try to type it back in, if I happen to come across it again, oh wait, let's see. No, if I happen to come across it again, I will answer it. Oh wait, I found it. What platforms or apps do you recommend for that offer a truly integrated online ecosystem across at least the 5 tools or apps presented? I understand they may be different for a service-based business than a retail one. You're comparing pros and cons of different ones. You know, it really depends on you know, even the decision about what website you're going to use may change some of those answers. So I think I would probably start by looking at what website you're going to get, and then see what integrates with the website. I think that's where I would start that conversation. Look for ones that will, if they have a built-in email market, some will have a built-in email marketing system, depending on what you do. Some you may have to bring in something else. I end up using, you know, I've ended up using sort of a patchwork of different things, but this, I do believe it's going to come back to you knowing what website you want first. Then look within that and say, okay, I know I'm going to want a sign-up form on my site. I know that I'm going to want a way to do email marketing. If you know you want these things and you're looking for it upfront in the process of establishing your website, you're probably going to get some better answers to that straight away. So I would start there in terms of order of operations.
All right. Melissa, thank you so much for this. So many questions. And I do encourage you guys, we will be posting our 2022 schedule very soon. And Melissa's doing a seminar about partnership marketing and some other different topics that you will see. So please stay tuned to that. And we will see you again soon. Thanks, Melissa.
Thanks all.